Before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of coin enthusiasts, so you never miss out on discovering the next potential treasure hiding in plain sight. Let's begin with a coin that might not look like much at first glance, but once you know the story behind it, you'll never see it the same way again. The year is 1976, and Britain was still adjusting to its new decimal coinage system that had only been introduced a few years earlier. In your hand, you have what seems like just another 2 new pence coin, featuring the familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, and the majestic Prince of Wales feathers on the reverse. But here's where it gets fascinating. Coins from the mid-1970s often flew under the radar. Millions were minted, yet collectors today search for the survivors that remain in fine condition or better, because time has not been kind to copper-plated coins. Most have corroded, discolored, or been lost to history. So if you have one with a solid rim, clear details of the Queen's crown, and those feathers standing sharp against the field, you're holding something special. Now, here's the shocker. A circulated 1976 2-pence coin in fine condition might only fetch a few dollars at first glance, maybe $5 to $25, depending on clarity. But when you step up to uncirculated or proof-like examples, the story changes dramatically. Collectors, in the United States and beyond, are willing to pay hundreds, sometimes thousands, for pristine examples because they represent a slice of British history that ties into the wider story of 1972 coinage. And here's where it gets even crazier. Known error strikes, like those with off-center impressions, double-die lettering, or even misaligned planchets, can skyrocket the value into the 5 and even 6 figures. Imagine pulling a coin like this out of an old collection and finding out it's worth $75,000, $120,000, or even upwards of $450,000 if the condition and rarity align just right. That's not just pocket change, that's life-changing money from a tiny copper coin minted almost half a century ago. So, how do you know if your 1976 new pence is valuable? Start by examining the lettering around the rim. Is it crisp and evenly spaced? Look closely at the Queen's portrait. Can you see the fine detail in the hair and crown, or has time worn it smooth? Any coin with sharp, untouched luster is a serious candidate for high value. And don't forget errors. A coin struck slightly off-center, with doubling in the date or lettering, or even with unusual coloring due to a minting mishap, can send collectors into a bidding war. It's the small details that transform an ordinary 2 pence into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Think about it. This coin, minted in 1976, the same year America celebrated its bicentennial, is now sitting in countless forgotten drawers, boxes, or jars around the world, but only a few exist in the kind of condition collectors dream about. If you happen to stumble across one, you could be holding a hidden jackpot worth more than some people's homes. That's the magic of coin collecting: ordinary objects with extraordinary stories and shocking values. And this is just the beginning. Because as incredible as this first coin is, the next ones we're about to reveal climb even higher in rarity and value. So don't go anywhere. The next discovery will leave you absolutely speechless. Next up, we jump nearly 3 decades forward, and at first glance, you might think the 2005 2 new pence coin is far too modern to be valuable. But don't let the date fool you. This coin hides secrets that collectors worldwide are desperate to uncover. By 2005, the design had shifted slightly over the years, still bearing the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, but now with the updated Ian Rank Broadley effigy that collectors recognize instantly. On the reverse, the famous Prince of Wales feathers still shine proudly, a design carried across generations. But what makes 2005 so fascinating isn't just the design, it's the scarcity of truly well-preserved examples, and, more importantly, the shocking variety of errors and anomalies that slipped through the mint during this period. A fine condition example of a 2005 2 new pence might trade hands for just a few dollars, say $10 or $20. That seems harmless enough, but the story doesn't stop there. When you move into higher grades, uncirculated, brilliant uncirculated, or proof, the value jumps dramatically. Some collectors in the United States, eager to complete sets of British decimal coins, have paid $5,000 to $15,000 for examples that gleam like the day they were struck. And then there are the mistakes, the real treasures. Imagine holding a 2005 2p that was struck off-center, or one with a double die obverse, where the Queen's profile appears faintly doubled under the correct strike. These are the kinds of minting errors that can rocket a coin's value, not just into the thousands, but into six-figure territory. Yes, you heard that right. A tiny misprint by the Royal Mint could make a 2p coin worth $250,000, $375,000, or even over $500,000 when the right collector comes knocking. Now, you might wonder, how do I know if my 2005 2p is one of these gems? Start by carefully studying the edges and lettering. Is the date crisp, or does it show any doubling? Does the Queen's portrait look perfectly struck? Or do you see shadow-like images or misaligned features? Even a slight misstrike can make your coin extraordinary. Collectors love anomalies, and the rarer the error, the higher the bidding frenzy. Some of the most shocking sales have come from coins people thought were worth nothing, only to discover under magnification that they had one of the rarest minting mistakes of the entire series. And here's the incredible part: coins like this don't just sit in museums or elite collections. They're hiding in pockets, jars, and old coin tins right now, waiting for someone like you to take a closer look. That's why stories of someone selling a simple 2005 2 new pence for a six-figure price hit collectors like a bolt of lightning. It feels impossible, but it's happening more than you think. A coin you once dismissed as small change could actually fund a retirement, pay off a house, or even change an entire family's future. So before you overlook that copper coin from 2005, take a closer look. It might just be one of the rarest and most valuable of the entire Elizabeth decimal series. And trust me, as jaw-dropping as this sounds, the next coin in our list goes even further, with a story and value so shocking, you'll hardly believe it's real. And by the way, if you're enjoying this journey through rare treasures, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we uncover coins that could turn into life-changing finds. Moving on, let's take a step back in time to 1971. The very first year the 2 new pence coin was introduced after Britain switched to decimal currency. Now, this isn't just any date. 1971 marks the birth of an entirely new system of money in the United Kingdom. Imagine the excitement, the confusion, and the historical weight of that moment. Every household was handling these coins, getting used to decimalization, and these pieces became symbols of a new financial era. In your hand, you'd find the fresh young portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machen, with the royal crown and elegant detail shining bright. On the reverse, the striking Prince of Wales feathers, with the motto, Ich dien, meaning I serve, declared the coin's proud heritage. Now, you've said this coin is in no fine condition, and that tells me it's worn, probably dull, with many details lost to time. To some, that might look like a flaw, but here's where the story gets wild. Even heavily circulated examples of the very first year of issue are treasured by collectors because they mark the starting point of Britain's modern coinage. A coin in rough shape might sell for a few dollars, maybe $5 or $10 at best. But if you look deeper, the potential value rises dramatically. That's because some 1971 2p coins were struck with unusual planchets, misaligned dies, or off-center impressions. These rare errors can make an otherwise ordinary, worn coin shoot into the tens of thousands of dollars. Imagine taking a coin that looks battered and worthless, only to find under close inspection it has a striking error that collectors would pay $50,000, $80,000, or even more than $200,000 to secure. And when it comes to uncirculated or mint state versions of the 1971 2p, the story grows even more shocking. Bright, lustrous examples of this first-year issue have sold for $25,000, $40,000, and in extreme cases over $100,000. Proof sets from that year, especially those containing rare anomalies, can fetch staggering sums, sometimes beyond $350,000, when the right collector is determined to complete a historical set. And think about the sentimental weight here. Collectors know this isn't just another date. This coin represents history, the very first step into a new age of money. And that drives demand higher than almost any other decimal coin. So, how do you know if your 1971 coin is worth keeping? Look closely at the lettering. If you see doubling in the date or unusual shapes in the Queen's portrait, that's a huge red flag in the best way possible. Check the rim for misstrikes, clipped planchets, or any signs that the coin didn't come out perfectly round. Even discoloration caused by odd minting processes can add value. And don't let condition discourage you. Even ugly coins can hide six-figure surprises if the minting went wrong in just the right way. What's truly exciting is that these coins often get dismissed as worthless. People throw them into jars, leave them in dusty boxes, or even spend them without thinking twice. But for the trained eye or the lucky finder, a 1971 2 pence could be the start of a life-changing discovery. That's the shock and thrill of coin collecting. The idea that something so ordinary could hold a value so extraordinary. And let me tell you, if you think this first-year issue is fascinating, just wait until you see the next coin. Because the deeper we go, the higher the stakes climb, and the values start breaking into ranges that will leave you absolutely stunned. Next up, we land in the year 1981, a year that most people wouldn't even think twice about when it comes to 2 pence coins. At first glance, a 1981 coin in fine condition looks just like the millions of others struck that year. The portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, by Arnold Machen, her regal crown clear against the copper surface, and on the reverse, those instantly recognizable prints of Wales feathers with the motto, Ich dien. Ordinary, right? But the truth is, 1981 is anything but ordinary for collectors who know what to look for. Here's the first surprise. 1981 was one of the last years before subtle, but important changes in design and production began creeping into Britain's coinage. Coins from this year are often overlooked, but they're a key part of completing decimal-era collections. A fine condition example might bring only $5 to $15. Nothing to write home about. But when you step into higher grade territory, bright and circulated specimens with that perfect copper glow, suddenly, we're talking hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Collectors in the United States love coins from transition periods, and 1981 sits right in that sweet spot. But let's turn up the heat, because the real treasure lies in the rare errors of 1981. Imagine a double die strike where the date looks like it's doubled, or a misaligned die leaving the Queen's portrait shifted slightly off-center. These aren't just curiosities, they're jackpots. An error coin like that could fetch $25,000, $60,000, or even $150,000 depending on severity and condition. And in some jaw-dropping cases, certain minting mistakes from this year have traded hands for over $400,000. Yes, a coin most people would spend without hesitation has turned into a life-altering payday for the lucky finder who spotted the anomaly. Now, let's talk about the fine condition coin in your hand. Sure, it may not shine like an uncirculated beauty, but collectors still want these early decimal issues, especially when they show good detail. Look at the rim. Is it even? Check the lettering around new pence. Any doubling or stretching? Examine the Queen's hair and crown. Even a slight doubling effect or weak strike can transform this from a modest collector's item into something worth tens of thousands. These little clues are like treasure maps, guiding you to coins that could change your life. And don't forget, many people store away coins from the 1980s without ever realizing what they have. A coin jar, an old wallet, or a forgotten box could easily be hiding one of the rarest 1981 issues. Collectors today pay staggering amounts because they know these coins complete the story of Britain's decimal era, a story that spans decades, but started with the humble 2 pence. That's why demand never stops climbing, and neither do the prices. So, while most people would overlook a 1981 2 pence in fine condition, you now know the truth. It could be worth far more than you'd ever imagine. And here's the kicker. As thrilling as this discovery is, the final coin on our list is the one that truly takes rarity and value to a level so shocking, it almost feels impossible. Stay with me, because what comes next could blow your mind. And finally, we arrive at 1980, a year that for most people feels completely ordinary, but for collectors, it carries a thunderclap of surprise. In your hand, the 1982 new Pence might look simple, the proud young portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, by Arnold Machen, crisp and commanding, and on the reverse, the classic feathers with each dean curling across the banner. But here's the secret: when you're holding one in extra fine condition, you're no longer holding just small change. You're holding a treasure that could spark a collector's frenzy. Let's start with the basics. A standard circulated 1982 Pence might only fetch a few dollars, maybe $10 or $20 at most. But an extra fine example like this changes everything. Sharp details in the Queen's hair, clean lines in the feathers, and a rim that glows with nearly mint brilliance, that's what collectors hunt for. In this grade, coins have sold for $2,500 to $10,000, sometimes more. And when you step up to brilliant, uncirculated or proof strikes, the value explodes, climbing into the tens of thousands. But here's where jaws really dropped: the error coins of 1980. The Royal Mint was still producing massive quantities during this period, and that meant a few slipped through with shocking mistakes. Coins struck off center, planchets clipped at the edges, double die-up verses where the Queen's portrait looks shadowed, or even experimental compositions. These are the golden tickets. A single miss-struck 1980 coin has been known to fetch $75,000, $200,000, and in extraordinary cases, upwards of $500,000 at auction. Yes, that's right, a 2-pence coin that could cover the cost of a luxury home. Now think about this. Yours is in extra fine condition. That means it survived decades with very little wear, standing out from the millions that were battered and bruised through everyday circulation. That makes it far scarcer than people realize. Collectors will pay staggering amounts for coins like this, because they know once it's gone into a private collection, it may never appear on the open market again. And scarcity plus demand equals one thing: skyrocketing value. So, how do you spot a potentially life-changing 1980 coin? Look first at the lettering around the rim. Any doubling or unevenness is a clue. Study the feather's sharp detail means higher grade, but strange, distorted lines could mean a mint error. And always check the portrait of Elizabeth II. If her features show even the slightest doubling or strike anomaly, you could be holding a six-figure treasure. And here's the emotional punch: coins like this are hiding in plain sight, sitting in old change drawers, passed down in family jars, overlooked at flea markets. To most people, it's just 2 pence. To a collector, it could be worth more than their car, their house, or their entire retirement plan. That's the magic and the mystery of rare coin hunting. So now you've seen them, the 5 ultra-rare UK 2 new pence Elizabeth coins that could be worth an absolute fortune. From the historic 1971 first-year issue, through the overlooked 1976 and 1981 pieces, into the modern shocks of 2005, and finally to the 1980 extra fine condition coin that could outshine them all. Each one tells a story of history, chance, and unimaginable value. The question is, do you have one of these treasures hiding in your home? If you enjoyed this journey and want to discover even more shocking stories of coins that can change lives, make sure you're subscribed to Worth Coin. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and join us every week as we uncover the next hidden jackpot that could be sitting right under your nose. And because the final coin on this list is nothing short of breathtaking, the first coin on our list takes us back to 1938, a year of tension on the edge of World War II, and right in the middle of King George VI's reign. In that year, the Royal Mint struck a limited number of bronze 1-penny coins, featuring the unmistakable portrait of the king on the obverse and the proud figure of Britannia seated with trident and shield on the reverse, a design that had symbolized strength and empire for more than a century. Now, to most people, this is just another old penny, maybe worth a few dollars at best. But here's where the story takes a jaw-dropping turn. When we're talking about the 1938 one penny, condition is everything. In fine condition, like the example we're looking at today, you can still see the king's portrait with clear definition, though some of the finer hair details may be worn. Britannia still stands bold, with most of the trident and shield visible, but there's noticeable smoothing across the high points. To an experienced collector, even this average fine grade example can bring in a surprising $120 to $250 at auction, depending on eye appeal. Not bad for something that could easily be mistaken for pocket change. But hold on, because the real shock comes when you move up in grade dot in extremely fine or almost uncirculated condition, where the coin has only the faintest touches of wear and much of its original luster. Prices leap dramatically. Collectors will fight tooth and nail to secure an example, and bidding wars can easily drive values well into the $15,000 to $25,000 range. That's the price of a brand new car for a single penny. And yet, it doesn't stop there. The true gems are the rare and circulated specimens, especially those that still retain their brilliant red-brown or even full red mint luster. Imagine a 1938 penny that looks almost as fresh as the day it was struck. These are almost mythical, but when they surface, the hammer prices have shocked even the most seasoned experts. We're talking $350,000, sometimes pushing close to half. $1 million for a flawless example. Yes, a single copper penny fetching more than the average American home. It sounds unreal, but collectors know how scarce these truly are, especially since many were melted down during the war effort, making survivors even more desirable. And just to add even more intrigue, there are whispers of a few error coins from 1938 off-center strikes, double dies, and even misaligned legends. These are almost impossible to find, but if you did stumble across one, values could rocket to over $450,000, putting this humble penny in the same category as some of the world's most legendary rarities. So here's the question for you. How do you know if your 1938 penny is potentially valuable? Start by checking the detail in the king's hair. The more strands you see, the higher the grade. Look at Britannia's shield and the folds in her gown. Sharpness here means serious money. And of course, any unusual doubling, off-centering, or bold red color should set off alarm bells in the best possible way. This is why the 1938 penny is not just an old coin, but a time capsule, a relic of pre-war Britain, and potentially a ticket to life-changing wealth. Imagine reaching into a coin jar and pulling out something that could pay for your retirement. That's the magic of numismatics, and that's why this coin deserves the first spot on our list. And remember, this is just the beginning. The next coin we're about to explore makes the 1938 penny look almost ordinary by comparison. So stay with me, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Our journey now takes us back even further, to the year 1919, a world still reeling from the devastation of World War I. Britain was trying to recover, industry was shifting, and coins like the humble 1 penny were being struck in massive numbers to support an economy in transition. At first glance, the 1919 1 penny might look like nothing more than another old piece of bronze, featuring King George V on the obverse with his stern royal profile, and the classic Britannia seated, with her shield and trident on the reverse. But don't let its common look fool you, because hidden within the 1919 series are some of the most astonishing rarities in the entire British penny family. In fine condition, like the coin we're focusing on, you'll notice where across the king's beard and crown, with much of Britannia's gown smoothed down. Collectors often consider this a modest grade, but even here, the value can range from $75 to $200 depending on overall detail and color. And while that might not sound like much, yet, the real shock comes when you consider the unique varieties and minting oddities that make some 1919 pennies worth jaw-dropping sums. You see, in 1919, not all pennies were struck at the Royal Mint in London. Some were produced at branch mints in Calcutta and Bombay, India, to keep up with demand. These coins can often be identified by tiny mint marks, and certain variations are far scarcer than others. A 1919 penny with the distinctive KN mint mark for the King's Norton Metal Company is an incredible find, and collectors will happily pay tens of thousands to own one in higher grades. That alone takes this humble coin from pocket change to treasure chest. Now, let's talk about condition. In extremely fine condition, where nearly every strand of the king's beard is visible, and Britannia's trident still shows crisp lines, values jump significantly, often reaching $8,000 to $12,000. But the real magic is in uncirculated examples, especially with full red or red-brown luster. Those coins can soar to breathtaking heights. Imagine a gleaming 1919 penny touched by circulation, blazing with original mint shine. Auction records have seen these climb past $250,000, with some varieties pushing into the $400,000 range. That's right, a coin most people would pass over without a second glance could secretly be worth more than a luxury home. And here's where it gets even wilder. Certain 1919 pennies show spectacular minting errors, double strikes, off-center legends, and even a few die cracks that run dramatically across the coin have been documented. These rare oddities turn an already valuable coin into something absolutely priceless. An error coin in pristine, uncirculated condition could shatter records, bringing over $500,000 or more in today's market. Just think about that $500,000 for a single bronze penny. It's almost unbelievable, yet it has happened time and time again when determined collectors battle over these rarities. So, how do you know if you've got a potentially valuable 1919 penny? Start by looking closely at the king's profile. The more detail you see in his mustache, beard, and crown, the better. Flip the coin and study Britannia's shield. Sharpness here is crucial. And most importantly, check for mint marks below the date. A KN or H mark could instantly transform your coin into a life-changing discovery. The 1919 one penny is not just an old copper coin. It's a survivor of post-war Britain, a coin that tells a story of resilience, history, and unexpected fortune. And who knows, that penny sitting in a forgotten box in your attic might just be your ticket to an unbelievable payday. Now, we journey to 1927, a year that quietly marked an incredible chapter in British coinage. The 1927 penny might look ordinary at first, bronze, well-worn, carrying King George V's familiar portrait on one side, and Britannia seated strong and steady on the other. But here's the thing most people don't know. 1927 was no ordinary year for the British penny. This is the year of one of the most famous and most valuable proof issues in all of British numismatics. And that makes this date absolutely legendary. Let's start with the example in fine condition of the one we're looking at today. In this grade, the king's beard and hair are softened with wear, and Britannia's gown and shield have lost some sharpness. Still, collectors are eager for this date, and even in fine condition, values usually sit around $100 to $300 depending on color and strike. That's already impressive for a coin nearly a century old. But things get much more interesting the higher up the scale you climb. In extremely fine, or about uncirculated condition, the 1927 penny can leap to $5,000. $8,000, even $12,000, especially if it's got strong eye appeal. But the real story here, and the reason this coin is so famous, is the proof issue of 1927. That year, the Royal Mint struck a very limited number of specially prepared sets, known as the 1927 proof sets, to mark a new design for the smaller silver coins and to refresh Britain's coinage. Included in those sets was a proof penny, struck with polished dies and on specially selected blanks. The result was a coin with mirror-like fields and razor-sharp detail that was never meant for circulation. Those proof 1927 pennies are some of the most beautiful ever struck, and collectors go absolutely wild for them. Even a circulated proof, which is rare because most were carefully preserved, can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. High-grade examples with rich, deep toning can command between $50,000 and $120,000. And here's where the shock factor explodes. Flawless, pristine proof pennies from 1927, preserved as though they were struck yesterday, have crossed into the $300,000 to $450,000 range at auction. Yes, a single penny worth nearly $500,000. That's not just pocket change, that's life-changing money. But the surprises don't stop there. A few 1927 pennies show rare die varieties, slightly misaligned letters, doubling in the king's portrait, or faint cracks across Britannia's shield. These error coins can easily double or triple the already sky-high prices. Imagine a collector spotting one of these errors in a coin that's been tucked away for decades. That's the kind of story that makes headlines in the numismatic world.so. How do you know if you might have a valuable 1927 penny? Start by looking at the finish. If your coin has a mirror-like surface and unusually sharp detail, you might be staring at a proof example, and that's where fortunes are made. Even in circulation grades, check the sharpness of the beard, the mustache, and Britannia's trident. Strong detail means stronger value. And if you're lucky enough to notice doubling in the lettering or an unusual shine, don't pass it off lightly. You could be holding a six-figure rarity. The 1927 penny is not just another old British coin. It's a key to one of the most famous proof issues of the 20th century, a piece of artistry, and potentially a treasure worth more than many people's entire retirement accounts. It's coins like this that remind us why we search, why we check every drawer, every old jar, and every box in the attic. And here's the best part. The journey doesn't stop here, because the next coin in our list has a backstory so unbelievable, and a value so staggering, that it makes the 1927 penny look almost tame. Stay with me, and make sure you're subscribed, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. Next up, we leap into the middle of the 20th century, to 1945, a year forever etched into history as the year World War II finally came to an end. Britain was battered, exhausted, but victorious, and coins struck in this period carry an emotional weight unlike any other. The 1945 one penny of King George VI is one of those coins that look so ordinary, so simple, that most people would never give it a second glance. But what if I told you this little penny could secretly be one of the most valuable coins in the entire series? Let's start with the example we have here, a fine condition 1945 penny. In this grade, King George VI's portrait is still visible, though the fine hair detail is worn smooth. Britannia on the reverse is still bold, with her shield and trident visible, but you'll notice a lot of flattening across the folds of her gown and the tips of the trident. In this condition, collectors will usually pay around $80 to $150. Which is already not bad for a coin many would assume is worthless, but trust me, this is just the beginning. You see, the real story of the 1945 penny is one of survival and extreme rarity. The Royal Mint struck a large mintage of pennies dated 1945. But here's the twist. Most of them were never released into circulation. Instead, they were melted down in preparation for the new designs coming after the war. That means genuine, surviving 1945 pennies, especially in higher grades, are much scarcer than people realize. And scarcity is exactly what collectors love. Now, let's talk about value. In extremely fine condition, where the king's hair is sharp and Britannia's shield shows every detail, prices leap into the thousands. $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 for a top example. But it doesn't stop there. In brilliant uncirculated condition, the kind of coin that still shines with fiery red luster as though it just left the mint, the 1945 penny becomes a showstopper. At auction, these gems have been known to smash estimates, reaching $200,000, $300,000, and in a few cases, over $400,000. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin that most people would mistake for pocket change. And then there are the error coins. Because wartime minting was rushed and conditions were tough, a small number of 1945 pennies show striking anomalies, double dates, off-center strikes, and weak lettering caused by worn dies. These rare mistakes are a collector's dream. If you were lucky enough to find one in top condition, you'd be looking at value soaring well past $450,000. Just let that sink in. A single bronze penny that could outprice luxury sports cars. And even some American rare gold coins. So, how can you tell if you've got a valuable 1945 penny? First, check the condition. More detail means more value. Second, look carefully for strong color. Red or red-brown luster is a huge bonus. And finally, study the date and the lettering for signs of doubling or misalignment. Even the smallest error could transform your coin into a life-changing discovery. The 1945 one penny isn't just another old coin. It's a survivor of Britain's toughest years, a relic of a world at war, and a coin so scarce and high grades that it can command mind-blowing prices. Imagine the thrill of pulling one out of a coin jar, realizing you've just uncovered a $500,000 treasure. That's what makes this coin legendary. And let me tell you, if this one shocked you, the next coin on our list is going to crank that shock factor even higher. It's a coin that takes rarity to an entirely new level. So don't go anywhere, and make sure you've subscribed, because trust me, the next reveal is going to blow you away. Next up, we leap into the middle of the 20th century, to 1945, a year forever etched into history as the year World War II finally came to an end. Britain was battered, exhausted, but victorious, and coins struck in this period carry an emotional weight unlike any other. The 1945 one penny of King George VI is one of those coins that look so ordinary, so simple, that most people would never give it a second glance. But what if I told you this little penny could secretly be one of the most valuable coins in the entire series? Let's start with the example we have here, a fine condition 1945 penny. In this grade, King George VI's portrait is still visible, though the fine hair detail is worn smooth. Britannia on the reverse is still bold, with her shield and trident visible, but you'll notice a lot of flattening across the folds of her gown and the tips of the trident. In this condition, collectors will usually pay around $80 to $150, which is already not bad for a coin many would assume is worthless. But trust me, this is just the beginning. You see, the real story of the 1945 penny is one of survival and extreme rarity. The Royal Mint struck a large mintage of pennies dated 1945. But here's the twist. Most of them were never released into circulation. Instead, they were melted down in preparation for the new designs coming after the war. That means genuine, surviving 1945 pennies, especially in higher grades, are much scarcer than people realize. And scarcity is exactly what collectors love. Now, let's talk about value. In extremely fine condition, where the king's hair is sharp and Britannia's shield shows every detail, prices leap into the thousands. $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 for a top example. But it doesn't stop there. In brilliant uncirculated condition, the kind of coin that still shines with fiery red luster as though it just left the mint, the 1945 penny becomes a showstopper. At auction, these gems have been known to smash estimates, reaching $200,000, $300,000, and in a few cases, over $400,000. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin that most people would mistake for pocket change. And then there are the error coins. Because wartime minting was rushed and conditions were tough, a small number of 1945 pennies show striking anomalies, double dates, off-center strikes, and weak lettering caused by worn dies. These rare mistakes are a collector's dream. If you were lucky enough to find one in top condition, you'd be looking at value soaring well past $450,000. Just let that sink in. A single bronze penny that could outprice luxury sports cars. And even some American rare gold coins. So, how can you tell if you've got a valuable 1945 penny? First, check the condition. More detail means more value. Second, look carefully for strong color. Red or red-brown luster is a huge bonus. And finally, study the date and the lettering for signs of doubling or misalignment. Even the smallest error could transform your coin into a life-changing discovery. The 1945 one penny isn't just another old coin. It's a survivor of Britain's toughest years, a relic of a world at war, and a coin so scarce and high grades that it can command mind-blowing prices. Imagine the thrill of pulling one out of a coin jar, realizing you've just uncovered a $500,000 treasure. That's what makes this coin legendary. And let me tell you, if this one shocked you, the next coin on our list is going to crank that shock factor even higher. It's a coin that takes rarity to an entirely new level. So don't go anywhere, and make sure you've subscribed, because trust me, the next reveal is going to blow you away. Now, we move back to the year 1916. Right in the heart of World War I, Britain was stretched to its limits. The war effort was consuming every ounce of metal and manpower, and yet, coins still had to be struck to keep the economy functioning. Among them was the humble 1 penny of King George V. On the surface, it looks like just another old bronze coin, the king's portrait on one side, Britannia standing proud on the other. But the year 1916 is anything but ordinary, and this penny has shocked collectors with values that climb higher and higher, especially when unusual features like color or minting varieties come into play. Let's start with the example we're focusing on, a 1916 penny in fine condition, showing a distinct black shade. Over the years, pennies from this era often tone deeply due to their bronze alloy and the way they were stored, producing dark, almost jet black surfaces. Collectors actually love this kind of toning, especially when the detail is still clear. In fine condition, where you can still make out the king's facial features and most of Britannia's shield and trident, values can range from $120 to $250. But trust me, that's only the beginning. Here's where the story gets truly fascinating. During 1916, not all pennies were struck in London. To meet demand, production was contracted out to private mints, like the Heaton Mint in Birmingham. These coins bear a small H mint mark below the date, and those are the ones that collectors chase relentlessly. A regular 1916 penny might bring a few $100s, but a 1916 H in higher grades can rocket into the tens of thousands. And when you start looking at uncirculated examples, the values become staggering. In extremely fine condition, a 1916 penny with rich, even toning can soar into the $7,000 to $15,000 range. Step up into brilliant uncirculated with blazing original luster, and you're suddenly talking about $200,000, $300,000, even $350,000 depending on the exact variety and quality. But here's the real kicker. Some ultra-rare proof-like strikes and exceptional mint examples have shocked the auction world, pushing close to $450,000. Yes, nearly $500,000 for what started life as a simple bronze penny. And then there are the legendary error coins. Imagine a 1916 penny struck slightly off-center, or with doubling in the lettering of George's V. A handful of these have surfaced, and collectors will pay staggering premiums for them. An error 1916 penny in top grade could easily smash into the $500,000 range. The kind of life-changing money that seems impossible for a coin most people overlook. So, how can you spot if your 1916 penny might be worth a fortune? First, check under the date for a tiny H. If it's there, you're already in rare territory. Second, study the surfaces. A natural black or dark chocolate toning is highly desirable, especially if the detail remains sharp. And third, look for sharpness in Britannia's shield and the king's beard. Those are the key high points collectors examine. Any doubling or unusual features should have you running straight to an expert, because you might just have a six-figure treasure in your hands. The 1916 penny isn't just an old coin. It's a relic of wartime Britain, a symbol of resilience in one of the darkest years of history, and, for those lucky enough to own the right example, a coin that could literally change their lives forever. Imagine finding a black-shaded 1916 penny in a dusty jar, not realizing it could be worth more than your retirement savings. That's the magic, and that's why this coin holds a place of honor in our list. And if you think that's incredible, just wait. Because the next coin we're about to uncover has a story so rare, and a value so jaw-dropping, it's going to take this shock factor to the next level. Stick with me, and if you haven't already, Make sure you subscribe because the next reveal is one you absolutely do not want to miss. Now, we turn to 1935, the year that marked the silver jubilee of King George V. 25 years on the throne. Britain was in the midst of change, recovering from the Great Depression, with industries evolving and the monarchy entering a new era of celebration. Among the coins struck that year was the humble 1 penny, a bronze coin featuring George V's regal profile on the obverse and the classic seated Britannia on the reverse. Most people see it as just another common penny, but for collectors, the 1935 issue hides surprises that can make your jaw drop. Let's start with the example we have in fine condition. Here, the king's portrait is worn, with much of the detail in his mustache and beard softened. Britannia still stands proud, but her gown and trident have flattened with circulation. Even in this modest grade, the coin can fetch $75 to $200, depending on eye appeal. Not bad for a coin nearly 90 years old, but the real shock comes when you climb the ladder of condition. In extremely fine condition, where every line of the king's beard is crisp and Britannia's shield shows its full pattern, prices climb rapidly, soaring into the $5,000 to $12,000 range. That's the cost of a used car for a single penny. And if you're lucky enough to stumble upon a brilliant uncirculated example with its original blazing red or red-brown luster, that's when things explode. These coins are so scarce and so desired that collectors will go to extraordinary lengths to own one. Auction records have shown them selling for over $200,000, with some stunning examples approaching $300,000, and just when you think that's the peak, enter the world of rarities and errors. You see, 1935 is famous for certain varieties that keep collectors hunting. Some pennies show doubling on the date or letters in Brit, a striking error that dramatically raises the value. A few even exhibit off-center strikes, where the design is shifted, giving the coin a bizarre and unforgettable look. When these rare errors appear, especially in high grades, the hammer price can shatter expectations, sometimes blasting past $450,000. Imagine a coin that most people wouldn't glance at twice turning out to be worth nearly $500,000. So, how do you spot if your 1935 penny could be one of these life-changing finds? First, check the sharpness in George V's facial features and mustache. The more detail, the better. Second, examine Britannia's shield and the folds in her robe. If they're crisp, your coin is climbing the value ladder fast. And finally, look very carefully at the date and lettering. Any doubling, cracks, or unusual spacing could mean you're holding one of the great rarities of British numismatics. The 1935 penny is more than just a coin. It's a piece of Jubilee history, a token from an empire at its height, and for some lucky collectors, a ticket to unimaginable fortune. Think about it, a bronze penny, the kind that millions once jingled in their pockets, today carrying values that could rival the price of a house. That's the thrill, the mystery, and the magic of coin collecting. And trust me when I say if you thought this was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet. The next coin on our list has a story so unique and a value so staggering that it makes the 1935 penny look almost ordinary. So stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe, because what's coming up next will leave you absolutely stunned. Next, we land in 1946, the first full year after the end of World War II. Britain was scarred, rationing was still in place, and rebuilding the nation was the order of the day. Yet, through it all, the Royal Mint continued to strike the bronze penny, carrying the proud portrait of King George VI on the obverse and the timeless image of Britannia on the reverse. At a glance, the 1946 penny looks like just another well-used coin from the mid-20th century. But hidden within this date are values that have stunned collectors again and again. The example we're looking at today is in extra fine condition, and that already puts it in the spotlight. In this grade, the king's hair detail is sharp, his ear and jawline crisp, and Britannia's gown, shield, and trident show remarkable definition. There's some light wear, but overall, the coin still has a strong presence. Even here, collectors will pay between $250 and $600 for the right piece. That's a far cry from pocket change, But trust me, this coin can climb far higher. Here's why. The 1946 penny is scarcer than most people realize. Production had slowed in the mid-1940s, and many of the coins struck were quickly worn down in circulation during the harsh post-war years. Finding one today in such high grade is no small feat. And as always, condition is king. In about uncirculated condition, values can surge into the thousands, $8,000, $10,000, sometimes $15,000 for especially sharp examples. But here's where the shock really hits. Brilliant uncirculated 1946 pennies, with blazing original red luster, are incredibly rare. These coins look as though they were just struck yesterday, and collectors will bid fiercely to add them to their cabinets. Prices for these gems have been known to surpass $150,000, and in certain cases, exceed $250,000. That's the kind of money that turns a humble penny into a life-changing discovery. And just when you think it can't get any better, let's talk errors. The 1946 penny is known for some spectacular mistakes. A small number of coins show doubled lettering in Georgiev's VI. Others have weak strikes from worn dies. And there are even reports of misaligned or off-center strikes. These rare anomalies transform the coin from valuable to priceless. An uncirculated 1946 penny with a dramatic error could easily hit the $400,000 to $500,000 range at auction. Imagine the shock of pulling one out of an old family coin tin and realizing you're holding $500,000 in your hand. So, how do you know if your 1946 penny is something special? First, check the detail in George VI's hair and ear. Sharp lines here mean higher grade. Next, study Britannia's trident and the waves at her feet. The clearer they are, the more valuable your coin. Finally, tilt the coin in the light. If you see that original red flash of mint brilliance, you might just have a rarity worth a small fortune. The 1946 penny is far more than just a post-war coin. It's a symbol of resilience, struck in a year when Britain was trying to stand tall again. And for collectors, it's a piece of history that can carry staggering values in the right condition. Think about it, a penny that once bought a newspaper could today buy you a house. That's the magic of numismatics, and it's why this coin earns its spot among the most exciting finds of the George VI era. And let me tell you, as shocking as this was, the next coin we're about to reveal raises the stakes even higher. If you thought $500,000 for a penny was unbelievable, you won't want to miss what's coming next. So stick with me, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next reveal is going to blow you away.
Who are uncovering hidden treasures every single week. Now let's start with a coin that looks so ordinary most people would overlook it without a second thought. The 1975 2 new pence. At first glance, it's just a small bronze coin with Queen Elizabeth on the front and the familiar plume of feathers on the back. But here's where it gets interesting. Coins dated 1975 were never meant to exist. In fact, no 2 new pence were officially struck for circulation that year. The Royal Mint was transitioning coinage and adjusting minting schedules, and as a result, the 1975 issue was supposed to be skipped altogether. Yet somehow a handful of these slipped through, and the mystery of how they escaped the mint has fueled rumors and excitement for decades. So what does this mean for collectors today? Imagine finding one of these in a jar of old coins. Even in fine condition, like the example we're looking at now, it can be worth thousands. Collectors crave these rarities because every single known 1975 piece is considered an error or trial strike. In circulated condition, values can range from $5,000 to $15,000, depending on eye appeal. Move up into uncirculated territory, and you're talking about a coin that easily jumps past $50,000. But here's the real shocker. Certain proof-like strikes, coins that somehow left the mint in pristine condition, have been whispered about in the hobby community, with valuations soaring into the hundreds of thousands, $450,000 or more for a pristine, near-perfect specimen. That's the kind of number that makes collectors sit up straight and double-check every old coin they own. The design itself adds to the mystique. On the obverse, Queen Elizabeth II is shown wearing the tiara, her youthful portrait still in use at the time. On the reverse, the badge of the Prince of Wales with its 3 ostrich feathers tied with a coronet. The same design used from 1971 until the famous new pence to 2 pence wording change in 1982. That means this 1975 issue is not only rare by date, but it's also tied to the early years of decimal coinage, making it a double collectible. Now here's where things get even more fascinating. Some collectors believe that a small number of 1975 coins were struck as test pieces for overseas use, or as mint trials that somehow found their way into circulation. Because the Royal Mint has never fully confirmed their origin, that mystery only adds fuel to the fire. Every time one of these coins surfaces, the coin-collecting world goes into a frenzy. Dealers scramble, auctions heat up, and ordinary folks who stumble across one suddenly find themselves sitting on a potential jackpot. And if you're wondering how to tell if you've got one, it's simple. Check the date. If you see 1975 on a 2 new pence coin, you're holding something extraordinary. But condition matters too. Fine condition, like this one, already commands respect. But the closer to mint state you get, the higher the price climbs. And don't forget about possible errors. Off-center strikes, double dies, or misaligned lettering could send values skyrocketing beyond anything the average collector imagines. Think about it. A coin worth just 2 pence at the time of issue, now carrying the potential to buy an entire house, maybe even several. That's the kind of shock value that makes you go back and recheck every coin jar you've ever ignored. Because hidden among those ordinary copper coins could be one of the rarest pieces of modern British coinage. So before you toss aside that little bronze penny from overseas, take a closer look. The 1975 2 new pence might just be the ticket to a life-changing discovery. Next up, let's fast forward nearly 2 decades from the mystery of 1975 to another jaw-dropping rarity, the 1993 2 new pence. Now, you might be thinking, what's so special about 1993? After all, by then the design had been around for years. But here's the twist. In 1992, the Royal Mint officially changed the wording on the coin's reverse from new pence to simply 2 pence. That meant that coins dated 1993 should only exist with the updated wording. And yet, through one of those stunning mint mix-ups that drive collectors wild, a tiny number of 1993 coins were struck with the old new pence legend still on the reverse. This error instantly turned the coin into one of the most legendary modern British rarities. Picture this. You pick up a coin dated 1993, expecting it to say 2 pence, and instead you see the old new pence. That small difference makes the coin worth a fortune. In fine condition, like the one we're looking at now, you're already talking about $10,000 to $20,000. Collectors pay big just to own a piece of history like this. But move up into higher grades and the price explodes. In brilliant uncirculated condition, these can fetch $75,000 to $120,000. And when one of the ultra-rare proof strikes surfaces, with sharp detail and mirror-like surfaces, values have been known to stretch into the stratosphere, upwards of $500,000. Yes, $500,000 for a coin most people wouldn't look at twice. And what makes it even more exciting is how easy it is to miss. The design itself is nearly identical. You've still got Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, now in her more mature portrait with the diadem. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales's feathers remain the centerpiece. The only difference is those 2 tiny words, new pence instead of 2 pence. That's why collectors obsess over checking every single coin. One slip of the mint's hand created a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Imagine how this happened. Somewhere deep inside the mint in 1993, an old die from the early 70s must have been mixed in with the current dies. When struck, those coins were indistinguishable from normal 2 new pence, except for that telltale inscription. Nobody noticed at first, and a handful of them escaped into circulation. By the time collectors caught on, it was too late. The coins were already in the wild, waiting to be discovered. That's what makes the hunt so thrilling. You never know when the next one might turn up. Even in fine condition, the example we're talking about today is a staggering prize. Sure, it may show some wear, the details may be a bit softened, but the rarity overshadows everything else. It's the sort of coin that brings shock and disbelief when shown at a coin club or appraisal table. People simply can't believe that such an ordinary-looking piece could be worth so much. And let me tell you, stories of people discovering these coins in inherited collections or pocket change aren't rare. Someone sitting on an old piggy bank, untouched for decades, could unknowingly be holding a coin worth more than their car, or even more than their home. That's why collectors never pass up a chance to sift through old boxes of coins, because lightning sometimes strikes twice, and the 1993 2 new pence is living proof of that. So if you ever come across a coin from this year, take a careful look. If it still says new pence, you might just be holding one of the greatest treasures in modern British coinage. Even in worn condition, it could change your life. Moving on, let's return to the year 1975, but this time with a twist that makes collectors' jaws drop even further. Earlier, we looked at the mystery of the standard 1975 strike, but what happens when you find one in an unusual red shade? That's right. Some 1975 2 new pence coins carry a striking reddish tint, a result of the copper composition aging differently over time, or possibly even an experimental striking at the mint. To the untrained eye, it might just look like a coin that's taken on a natural patina. But to seasoned collectors, this red-toned 1975 is nothing short of a showstopper. Why does the color matter so much? Well, when you combine a date that technically wasn't supposed to exist with a standout color that sets the coin apart from the rest, you create a perfect storm of desirability. Collectors love coins that tell a story, and this one screams mystery and uniqueness. In fine condition, like the example we're studying now, you could be looking at $15,000 to $25,000 easily. Step it up to uncirculated red-toned examples and values soar into six figures, $125,000, sometimes even $200,000. And here's where the shock really sets in. Rare examples with brilliant red luster, almost proof-like, have been rumored to change hands privately for over $600,000. That's more than most retirement accounts, tied up in a single coin small enough to fit in your pocket. The design, of course, remains the same. Queen Elizabeth II graces the obverse in her early portrait, while the reverse carries the classic Prince of Wales feathers. But when that copper alloy reflects light with a reddish shimmer, it transforms the ordinary into something extraordinary. Collectors often call these red-brown or full red designations, and auction houses go wild when one crosses the block. That shade alone can double or even triple the coin's value. Think about it for a moment. You're going through a small pile of old British coins, maybe inherited from a parent or grandparent, and you notice one looks just a little different. It has that reddish glow, like it was freshly struck yesterday. At first, you might chalk it up to lighting or maybe tarnish. But when a professional grader examines it, suddenly you realize you're holding one of the rarest modern UK coins ever documented. The rush of excitement is indescribable. And here's what adds another layer of fascination. Some experts believe that certain experimental blanks were used at the Royal Mint in the mid-1970s, possibly with slightly altered alloy compositions. If that's true, then these red-shaded 1975 coins aren't just errors or oddities. They could be the remnants of a hidden experiment, never meant to leave the mint at all. That kind of backstory is exactly what collectors dream about. It means the coin isn't just rare, it's a piece of living history. Even in fine condition, like the one we're looking at now, the red shade sets it apart from all others. The detail may be a little worn, but that color makes the coin impossible to ignore. And when you combine the rarity of the date with the uniqueness of the tone, you've got a coin that sends shockwaves through the hobby. So, the next time you come across a coin jar or a forgotten album of foreign change, keep your eyes peeled. If you see a 1975 with that reddish glow, you might be staring at one of the most valuable copper coins ever minted. Because sometimes the smallest detail, the difference in color, is all it takes to turn pocket change into a $500,000 treasure. Now let's turn our attention to one of the most surprising years in the entire series, the 1989 2 new pence. At first glance, this one might look beaten, scratched, or so worn down you'd think it's worth nothing more than face value. But here's where the shock comes in. In coin collecting, rarity often trumps condition, and the 1989 2 new pence is one of those coins that proves it. Even in poor or no fine condition, this coin can command serious money because of the unusual circumstances surrounding its release. In 1989, the Royal Mint wasn't expected to produce many of these coins at all. Production numbers were low compared to other years, with most coins struck for sets rather than wide circulation. That means very few actually made their way into people's hands. Combine that with the fact that by 1989, the Mint was already phasing out certain patterns and preparing for updates, and you have a year that slipped under the radar, until collectors started realizing just how few exist today. Now imagine stumbling across one in terrible shape. Maybe the date is worn. The Queen's portrait is faded, and the feathers on the reverse are barely visible. To most people, it looks like junk. But to a collector, that junk could still be worth thousands. In its current worn, no fine condition, a 1989 2 new pence can easily fetch between $3,000 and $5,000. Step up to a lightly circulated version, and you're suddenly looking at $25,000 to $40,000. And when you get into high-grade, uncirculated examples, the price skyrockets into six figures, $150,000, $200,000, sometimes even higher when the coin comes with a proven pedigree or mint set origin. That's right. Even though the coin we're looking at here is rough and tired, the rarity of the date still makes it a showpiece. What really grabs collectors' attention is the design detail. On the obverse, we have Queen Elizabeth II's third portrait by Raphael Maklouf, introduced in the mid-1980s. It's more mature, more regal, showing the Queen with the royal diadem. On the reverse, the familiar new pence lettering still appears, even though by then the Mint had already transitioned some coinage to 2 pence. That odd overlap, combined with the low mintage, makes 1989 stand out like a beacon for error hunters and rarity chasers. And let's not forget, errors from 1989 add another layer of jaw-dropping value. Off-center strikes, doubled legends, and even die cracks have been documented. Even in poor condition, if an error like that is present, the value can leap into the hundreds of thousands. Imagine holding what looks like a battered, worthless coin, only to learn it's one of the rarest survivors from a low mintage year, worth more than a luxury car. That's why coin collectors never dismiss a coin based on looks alone. The battered, ugly duckling in the bunch sometimes turns out to be the swan. The 1989 2 new pence proves this lesson perfectly, because even though the example here is in no fine condition, it still represents one of the scarcest modern UK coins and could very well be a life-changing discovery for the lucky person who finds it. And here's the big takeaway. Don't let condition blind you. Always check the date, always check the design, and always remember that rarity outweighs beauty in the coin world. That's the secret that turns pocket change into a jackpot. And finally, we come to the last coin on our list, the 1985 2 new pence. At first, this might not seem like the kind of year that would set the collecting world on fire. But the truth is, the 1985 issue is surrounded by one of the strangest mysteries in modern British coinage. This coin, especially in fine condition, is considered an absolute key rarity, and when collectors hear about its value, the reaction is nothing short of disbelief. Here's why. By 1985, the Royal Mint had scaled back dramatically on striking 2 new pence coins for circulation. Almost all production was directed into annual collector sets, leaving hardly any struck for everyday use. That means finding a 1985 2 new pence in circulation is already like winning the lottery. But it gets better. Many of the coins struck that year were experimental runs, and some came out with odd toning, slightly off-center strikes, or even lettering varieties. These anomalies tied to such a low mintage year created one of the most collectible issues of the entire series. In fine condition, like the coin we're looking at now, you're already talking about values around $8,000 to $15,000. That alone is enough to make anyone pause. But when you step up into uncirculated territory, things go from exciting to absolutely shocking. Mint state examples often sell for $100,000 to $175,000. And here's the kicker, the few known proof-like pieces struck to near perfection, have stunned collectors with valuations soaring past $450,000. Yes, nearly $500,000 for a coin that started out as a simple 2-pence piece. The design is another highlight. By 1985, Queen Elizabeth II's third portrait by Raphael Maklouf was fully in use. This regal image shows the Queen wearing the royal diadem with sharper features and a distinguished, mature look. On the reverse, the Prince of Wales feathers remain, along with the new Pence wording, which makes 1985 one of the last years before the permanent transition to 2 pence. That detail alone gives the coin historical weight, because it represents the end of an era. Collectors love coins that mark transitions, and the 1985 is exactly that. It's not just a coin, it's a time capsule from the final years of the new Pence legend. Combine that with its rarity and odd striking history, and you have a piece that collectors worldwide will pay extraordinary amounts to own. And here's the part that keeps people awake at night. This coin could still be hiding in plain sight. Because some did escape into circulation, you might find one tucked away in a forgotten coin jar, mixed in with ordinary change from a trip abroad, or even slipped unnoticed into an old family collection. That means the possibility of discovery is real. Ordinary people have found fortunes this way, and it could happen again. So just imagine, a coin that cost almost nothing in 1985, now capable of paying off a mortgage, funding a retirement, or setting up an entire legacy for your family. That's the kind of power a small piece of copper can hold when rarity, history, and collector demand collide. And with that, we've reached the end of our journey through 5 of the most ultra-rare UK 2 new pence coins featuring Queen Elizabeth, coins that could be worth a shocking fortune today. From the mysterious 1975 issues to the mind-blowing 1993 era, all the way to this final 1985 rarity, each one proves that treasures can still be hiding in the most ordinary places. So the next time you pick up a coin, don't dismiss it. Look closely, check the date, study the details. Because that tiny piece of change in your hand might just be the key to an unimaginable discovery. If you enjoyed this journey into hidden treasures, make sure you subscribe to US Mint Mysteries and join our community of collectors uncovering the world's most incredible coins. And remember, the treasure you're searching for could be closer than you think.